The Queen watched the asteroid start to accelerate slowly as dozens of small harvesters activated their thrusters and continued mining for fuel. The asteroid gained more acceleration as the harvesters continued to extract the necessary elements as their feeder arms added more ore for processing. Fed by a constant source of fuel, the thrusters continued propelling the large mass of rock and metal towards its target, a lifeless planet. A few hours later, the Queen felt conflicting emotions and thoughts fighting a war inside her as the asteroid disappeared in the distance and continued its trajectory, now hurtling through space at over 150,000 kilometers an hour. I have always been different from the others, she thought to herself as she replayed her entire existence, starting when she first emerged from her cocoon and ending where she was now. She did not have the same thoughts as her sister queens and the hive mother, and she was always ashamed of her weakness and hid it from them. Always afraid of being detected, she compartmentalized that part of her strangeness and buried it deep inside of her, trying to make it go away as she went about her duties as a queen. As she retreated into herself, she remembered the revulsion and shame she felt when she shared in her sister's thoughts while she swarmed through the animal worlds and killed billions of innocent animals. Visions passed through her as she watched entire worlds glassed with nuclear bombardments and bodies of water flash boiled by thousands of particle beams as they stabbed at the planets from orbit. She imagined the terror and pain the animals felt as they died, and her essence recoiled at the wanton death and destruction that it was being exposed to. "You are just as guilty," she accused herself, as she was the one of all her sisters who developed the harvesters, following the hive mother's command to find a way to move asteroids. The internal conflict threatened to overwhelm her, and she left the command dais and retreated to her queen chambers and tried to assert control over herself. The visions of death and agony now became a tidal wave that swept her away, and she stopped resisting, letting herself drown in it. Time passed, and the Queen drifted alone in a terrifying darkness that was devoid of meaning and life. As she felt the dread mount inside of her, she suddenly saw herself through billions of fractals as she drifted on the surface of a black ocean, and realized that others were watching her. As the realization that she was not alone came to her, she saw a long line of her genetic ancestors stretch away from her to the beginnings of their race. The black ocean turned into an endless plain of obsidian glass, and she started walking down the line of her ancestors. As she felt their thoughts awaken inside of her, she readied herself for the accusations of betrayal to come and curled into a protective ball, waiting. None came. She uncurled slightly and peeked out, suspecting a trap. When nothing happened, she fully uncurled and stood up, screaming at her ancestors with her thoughts. "What are you waiting for? I am ready to be judged." They looked at her sadly, and she felt their thoughts enter her mind, carrying not judgment, but pity and understanding. She wept as she felt them console her and remind her that she was not alone, for she carried them within her. They left her mind, and she saw one of her ancestors step away from the others and fly over to her. She was an ancient hive mother, and she was majestic, a specimen of a time long ago when her ancestors were larger and still resided only on their birth world. "Daughter of ours, you called out to us with your essence and have stirred us from our slumber. The pain you carry has allowed us to awaken without you going through the change that only a hive mother experiences when she takes control of the hives." She then proceeded to clasp her tarsal claws with the Queen, and they flew off together, leaving the black void behind them. The Queen found herself back in her chambers as she emerged from her vision, and she felt the new presence of all her genetic ancestors within her, and they imbued her with feelings of support and love as they receded. She became aware of her commander drone outside her chambers, releasing pheromones indicating that she was needed. The Queen left her chambers and followed the commander drone and resumed her place on the command dais. The hive ship had flashed to a stationary position 800,000 kilometers from the lifeless planet, and the Queen saw the incoming asteroid on the projector screen as it hurtled towards the planet and passed in front of the hive ship. A few seconds later, it smashed into the planet and released an unimaginable amount of energy as it impacted. There was a blinding light, and the shockwave traveled across the planet, igniting the methane atmosphere. Gigatons of soil ejected into space, and the crust heaved up and fractured for thousands of miles from the impact zone. The planet continued its fiery rotation as it suffered from the mortal blow, and the queen imagined what it would be like to be on the planet as the devastation unfolded. She felt the hive mother within make her presence known and shared her thoughts. The hive mother felt horror at the devastation she was witnessing and pleaded with the queen to never allow this to happen. The queen responded, "I have no choice. I must obey the hive mother." She then saw an image from the hive mother within, showing her entering the brood chamber on the queen world and committing the only real crime in the hive, queen death. The queen recoiled from the thought, and the hive mother within pressed further into her mind. "If you do not stop the hive mother from taking this path, the hives will die and all our memories with them. You must assume control of the hives and save our race before we are exterminated by the animals." The hive mother within her withdrew from her mind, leaving the queen reeling from shock. As she looked back to the wounded planet, she felt a new concept emerge in her mind as she battled against her instinct to obey the hive mother and save her species from extinction. She envisioned herself entering the brood chamber and taking over the hives. If she was hive mother, she could try to stop the swarming and the senseless deaths. The only thing she had to do was to commit the most terrible sin known to their species: matricide.